We all right to start?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome councillors, officers and members of the public viewing on YouTube to this meeting of the Avon Pension Fund Committee. Can I remind everyone to keep background noise to a minimum, to only speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please mute your microphones when not speaking and then unmute when I invite you to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility on Zoom by typing in MIS, may I speak, and I will call you to speak in turn. Should the committee need to take a vote in order to expedite a result, I will assume a majority position, so if you wish to abstain or vote against, please indicate this in the chat, then moving to the vote. The votes taken today will need to be ratified by the Quorum Committee meeting that takes place on Monday, 28th of March. Any questions? I can't see anyone looking for questions. Okay, apologies for absence and substitution. Democratic Services, please.
Just a couple, Chair. Apologies from John Goddard and Mike Rumpf, and the possibility that Richard Orton might be joining us a bit later.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? I can't see anyone waving or coming to my attention. Let me just check chat. Right, I'm assuming there are no declarations of interest. Hang on a second. Close. Right, item 4, urgent business agreed by the chair. There is no urgent business. Items 5 and 6, public councillor statements. There are none. Item 7, minutes of the 10th of December 2021 and the 17th of December 2021, public and exempt. Can I confirm these as a correct record? Can someone move there, or if not, raise any queries about them? Right, it's moved by Councillor Paul May.
Second that, Chair.
And seconded by Councillor Bruce Shern. Thank you very much. Is there anyone disagreeing with that? I've got nothing coming up in the chat. I've got no one waving at me, so I'm assuming that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 8, 2022-25 Service Plan and Budget. Can I invite Tony Bartlett and Dave Richards to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. As by way of introduction, when I first started writing the introduction to this, it was early in January, and we were coming out of a COVID period and looking to emerging into some degree of normality. And by the time I get to February, how quickly things have changed, really. And, you know, I know we're dealing with some of the challenges to the fund. I think, those challenges pale into insignificance as to what's really happening in Ukraine. And I think that, for the sake of the people in Ukraine and the people in Russia, really, that we hope that this tragedy comes to an end really soon. There'll be quite a bit to talk about in respect of the investment impacts and the funding impacts of this problem going forward. Suffice to say that the upshot will be a much more difficult, I think, valuation process than we would expect in a really strong position going into the valuation, and now it's going to be obviously much more difficult. The funding and risk management group have met recently, and we have kicked off quite a number of pieces of work to assess the impact of that. I won't dwell on that because there'll be more about that later. As far as the rest of the business plan is concerned, the administration, as you're aware, have had quite a difficult time over the last couple of years performance-wise, and we have been working quite hard to think about how we could change the operating model to improve that. Jeff and Carolyn will be presenting a few slides in a few moments to sort of go through some of the ideas and the plans we have to change that operating model. And basically it's about providing some greater focus on the digital services side, to strengthen our management arrangements and support, and to strengthen our retention and recruitment options by introducing some career grade structuring across the fund. So those things will be undertaken during the year. And I said, Jeff and Callum will just go through a few slides in a moment to take you through that. Other key aspects, obviously, is cybersecurity is now far heightened across the public sector, and actually some of the threats and risks are quite close to home, really. So we'll be doing quite a lot of work on cybersecurity over the coming months, and looking at the infrastructure resilience of our technology and our DR arrangements and business continuity arrangements. That's probably the main features I want to bring to your attention. I'm happy to take questions. The service plan, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We've been on this direction of travel for quite some years now, and we're continuing to move in the same direction we've set ourselves out through the admin strategy over the last few years.
I've currently got nothing in chat from anyone raising any questions.
Charles?
Charles, did you have a question?
Yes, please. It's a very simple question, actually, Tony. On page 3, you be moving into new offices at the River Suite in Keynsham. Is that correct?
That's right. So,
that's the old sort of place where they did dancing and things like that with a stage in it.
Yes, but the stage will be there, but it won't be used for dancing anymore. So, as you know, we've all been working on home for the last 2 years. We have come to arrangement with the council whereby we'll be used the old, the old leisure suite, which was part of the old offices in Keynsham a few years ago. Now, I'm hoping to be able to move into those offices towards the end of the year. I guess it's quite a milestone, really, because for the first time, the Avon Pension Fund will have had their own suite of offices, a dedicated space for the fund. And Liz and Jeff are working through with the Transformation Board, who are leading the project, to sort of work through the space requirements and the layout and the branding. And, you know, we put some money in the budget to sort of support that as well. So we've got a clear identity for the fund in those offices. But that will come to fruition hopefully in the year, and we'll be fully moved in, I would have thought, sometime after into 2023.
That's good news. Thank you very much.
Shirley Marsh.
Thank you, Chair. Tony, I'm fully supportive of the proposals in the budget and the plan. I suppose my only question is whether, given this is going out to 2025, whether it goes far enough. You know, understanding the issues that we have at the moment in the admin space in terms of salaries and retention, not just in public sector, but, you know, throughout the pensions industry. I'm just wondering whether, you know, you've got enough to do what you need to do with the challenges that are coming ahead.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think with my financial hat on, we've never got enough money in the system in reality. You know, so it always has to, but it's actually a question of what we can manage. So I think we're at the stage where we're throwing more money at the organisation actually doesn't help us, because we have more issues to manage then. So it's about managing what we can, you know, and focusing our delivery. And that's what the restructuring is about, really, is getting much more focus into those areas. There will be a need for more investment on the technology side. That's undoubtedly, and some of those proposals will no doubt come forward during the course of the year. There will probably be further consultations by government on different aspects of you know, what our investment strategy should be. And again, you know, if there are implications for the service, then those investment requirements will again come forward. But I think at the moment, you know, we do have a full agenda. You know, we've set the direction of travel and worked incrementally. Unfortunately, COVID has slowed us down. hopefully we can start to accelerate that. We are working in offices in the Guildhall at the moment, so that's what's helped to turn around some of our performance. Once we are into the new offices, we'll really be able to motor, and I think that's when then we can really look at that longer term plan, because we're in a much better position, much stronger position to bring forward proposals which are credible and deliverable. At the moment, I'm a little less confident of that.
Yeah, and I'm I'm obviously full of praise for everything that you and the guys do, because it is a challenge. But we've learned so much from investment pooling and the benefits that have brought. I would think, looking forward, we ought to try and look at some of those benefits on the admin side as well, in terms of whether that is something in the longer term that would be looked at. But I understand it's one step at a time. So thank you.
So I've got no further questions. Does anyone want to start a debate on the paper, or move a motion, or talk about the paper in general rather than questions? I've got no further questions. I can see.
Paul. I put it in the may I speak?
Oh,
chat.
sorry, I missed that then. Sorry. Yeah, please speak.
Under this item, when are we going to return to committee meetings in person? It's been 2 years now when we've had Zoom committee meetings. The committee needs to meet to ratify the decisions after the meeting. So could you tell me when we're going to meet in person?
Shall I answer that, Chair?
Yeah, yes, please, Tony.
So, yeah, I mean, we seem to be, lumbering along, expecting to be able to meet in person. That's not just, the pensions committee, there's the council, other committees, and then we have an upturn in COVID infection rates, and then, that then drives then the movement to online meetings all the time. At the moment, infection rates are increasing. And I think that the problem is, how do you strike that happy balance? Because what we're unable to deliver as an organisation is a hybrid meeting. What we'd really like to do is to enable people who want to meet, and actually, those who want to stay online, to actually enable them to have that meeting so they can all, meet their own requirements. We don't have the facilities at the moment to enable that hybrid situation. So with rising infection rates, it is a case of, well, we can't offer that hygiene requirement that we need in these meetings, therefore online is the option. Yeah.
Could I come back on that? You could get people to take lateral flow tests before a meeting and wear masks in a meeting. I don't think the committee gels as well when we meet on Zoom.
I think that's a very good point you make, and I certainly feel that as well, being new to this committee. But what we're doing on the Avon Pension Fund is following the lead that the council takes, and the council has just gone back to Zoom meetings. But I hear what you say, and what we'll do is we'll look very closely at seeing how we can at least do a hybrid meeting for the next one, which, by the way, will be the last one with Tony, and we'll say goodbye to him properly at that one. But I will commit to working with council officers to see about the possibility of a hybrid meeting at the very least for the next one.
Thank you, Chair.
I've got,
Chair?
I've got another chat. Who is that? That's
It's Bruce.
Hi, Bruce. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, just to say, and I accept everything which you're saying, but we've just lost a neighbour with COVID sort of thing. I know he was in his 80s, but even so sort of thing, he'd survived the 2 years through the pandemic. And people think it's gone away. It hasn't, I'm afraid. So, I understand that, and I hope that we will be able to meet all together, but at the moment I'm very, very careful with what I do and where I go, sort of thing. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a note from Councillor Pearce that they do this in Bristol, so we will investigate the possibility of a hybrid meeting at the very least for the next one, depending on what COVID's doing. But I think we need to move on to the paper rather than the process. I will assure the meeting that I will look into the possibilities of hybrid for the next one. So if we can move back to the paper now, I've got Shirley Marsh.
Thanks, Chair. Tony, I just wanted to check what role the Pensions Board have with the budget and service plan. Have they also seen this, and do they approve it?
No, the pension board don't approve it. It is purely a matter for the pensions committee. Clearly issues within the paper, particularly around the administration, are discussed with the pensions board on an ongoing basis. So things like the office move and the structure, which Jeff and Carolyn will go through in a second, have been discussed with the pensions board. But no, the approval and the budget is purely a matter for the committee.
Okay, I just think it's important that you get their support, because obviously if we are going to spend more money, it's for the right reasons. So absolutely. It's important that they get that support. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've got no one else in the chat room with "May I S." No one's asking to debate the paper, so we do need some sort of political recommendation.
I need to ask another question.
Okay, yes, please, come on.
Yeah, in the paper it says Brunel Pension Partnership manages 83% of the fund's assets. Is that going to be the maximum, and which assets do the pension funds directly manage? And a further question, it says savings, it gives the savings figure for the Brunel Pension Partnership for 2036. Could somebody give a net savings figure for 2024-25?
Tony, can you answer that?
Liz will answer them all.
I'll answer that one. I'll have to come back to you on the second one, because on the net saving, I think it's about 3 or 4 million by then per year. So I'll come back to you on that one. I'll put it in an email to everyone if you don't mind. So 83% already. So all our listed and markets are now managed by listed market assets are now managed by Brunel. We still retain some of the legacy assets that are more in the private markets domain. So partners, the overseas property, which will wind down. They're the sort of funds you can't sell out of. They'll wind down over the next 5 to 10 years. But by then we'll have very little left in there. And as we wind down, that money will be given to Brunel to invest in whatever portfolios we allocate to. We're actually in the process of selling down our hedge fund portfolio. We're halfway through. We'll finish the rest of it in the next financial year, and that will again be recycled into Brunel portfolios. And that's that in total be about another 5-6% of those. We then have the one that we're not quite sure how we're going to do, and what we're going to do is our IFM, our core infrastructure portfolio. So we're just working on that and thinking of ways of potentially selling out of that. But we don't have to be forced sellers of any of these assets. The intention is that all our assets would be managed with Brunel where possible. But it will take time now. We've done the bulk of it, and it will take time.
Good. Thank you. Councillor John Cato.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, are we having a presentation on this paper as well, or are we just going to...
Yeah, I'd just like Carolyn and Jeff to go through the sort of revised operating model, just to give you a bit of a heads up of the plan changes for the administration going forward.
So
that's okay, Paul?
I'd certainly appreciate, officers giving more of a conversation around it, certainly.
Well, they will talk you through it, yeah. So we can do that. But I think
Thank you.
The plan will be to bring you a much more fuller presentation in the future as well. Okay, Carolyn, Jeff, would you like to go through it?
Beg your pardon, I'm just unmuted. Good afternoon. Thanks, Tony. So as Tony alluded to, we have got a short presentation to go through, and also I think we just wanted to pick up on a final point in the service plan, which relates to our AVC provider. But perhaps if we can go through the presentation first, as we're kind of on train there. So as Tony mentioned, sort of a key feature for the administration is the introduction of a new operating model for the administration, to kind of restructure and kind of set out a slightly different way of working going forward. Karen will now sort of open up the presentation, and I'll give a bit of an overview, and Carolyn will give some more detail. So just bear with us a second with the technology. Thanks, Carolyn. So you would have seen in your papers the following slides anyway, but the changes will maximise the digital service delivery while separately providing greater focus and control on workload and performance. A business support and development function, which appears here as Tier 3, will subsume the remaining services and lead on commissioning activity and projects going forward. The change in structure will remove the current duplication of work falling between both member and employer services, which we've kind of been sort of having to try and deal with over the last sort of 4 to 5 years, and in particular since we've increased our iConnect take up. So that can kind of will move things forward, and the change in structure will remove the current duplication of work falling between member and employer services, and will provide a business focus in key areas. Very briefly, Tier 1 will separate out all digital services and drive the use of self-service and provide an end-to-end processing, whilst Tier 2 will focus on key processes and controls. And as I said earlier, Tier 3 will provide a cross-service support and development arm. The development, as Tony mentioned, development of flexible job roles and a career grading structure will enable people to move across the teams, mitigating the recruitment and retention posts, again, an issue that we struggle with a bit at the moment. Whilst the transformation is being established, a project to kickstart some of the work, particularly around the service, digital service around and customer support, will be implemented. I'll hand over now to Karen, who will go into a little bit more detail and kind of go through the operating model concept that we've designed. Thanks,
okay,
Karen.
thank you, Jeff. I'll just switch to the next slide. So this is how we're trying to illustrate how the new operating model will work. So it's a tiered approach, and the aim is that if we can get our self-service offering correct within Tier 1, then that will enable sort of greater focus and better service to members and employers in the operations area of Tier 2. And then, as Jeff has mentioned, Tier 3 and 4 are really all or Tier 3 is the supporting tier, and then 4 the leadership tier. So that's the kind of concept of the model. But if I go back to the first slide, just explain the roles of the teams in a little bit more detail. So under Tier 1, we'll have the digital services team, and they will focus on progressing the self-service solutions for members and employers. So part of the digital services team will be a customer contact team, and all new members of the scheme will be set up with access to My Pension Online. and support will be provided to members to carry out functions such as updating addresses, expression of wishes, and running estimates of benefits. All phone calls and emails will also be received by this team, and they will aim to help members carry out basic tasks via My Pension Online or assist them to find information on our website. The iConnect team will also form part of the digital services team and ensure all new and existing employers are set up to submit their data via iConnect. Currently, all leaver notifications received via iConnect are acknowledged by the employer services team and then passed to the member services team for processing to the next stage, for example, to become a deferred benefit, aggregate benefits, or to receive a refund. We believe this process has been part of the reason why we have such a large backlog of leavers. And therefore, our aim is to streamline the processes and, where regulations allow, process straight through with the use of bulk processing where possible, for example, with deferred benefits. We believe that this will allow the member and employer services team, which will form part of Tier 2, to better support members and employers in more complex areas. The member services team will focus on areas where members need more support, for example, retirements, deaths and transfers, where processes are more manual and require options to be made. The team will be very focused on turnaround times, ensuring all time-sensitive work is kept within targets. The employer services team will be focused on employer engagement, ensuring training is carried out to support employers understand their responsibilities, and they will also be responsible for data quality. Most of the record keeping will be carried out in Tier 1, with the quality control of the data in Tier 2. Moving on to Tier 3, Tier 3 will contain all the support functions needed by Tier 1 and Tier 2, such as technical support, liaison with our financial systems and Hayward, training, project capacity, and it will also contain the communications team. Ultimately, we aim to carry out consultancy work at this level, for example, providing support to members with annual allowance and lifetime allowance, and also offering chargeable services to employers, which is something that we've been hoping to do for some time now. Finally, Tier 4 will consist of the management team, focusing on leadership, policy and strategy. And I will now hand back to Jeff to go through the roadmap.
Thank you, Carolyn. So quite a lot to get through to achieve our aims here, and we set ourselves quite a stringent time frame to implement the new structure, hopefully by within the next sort of 12 to 15 months, but sort of aim for 12 months. So there are a couple of, there are three sort of key things that we have to clear through to kind of achieve what we're setting out to do. Obviously, existing projects, a key one really for us is the completion of the iConnect rollout, because we clearly want to get all of our employers onto the same single platform, providing us with data monthly and automatically. And that will kind of feed into a majority of the work undertaken in Tier 1. So we're looking to get that completed by March 23. There has been a slight pause on that, particularly whilst we go through the valuation period that we're going through at the moment. Other areas to clear down, really, obviously, we're looking to have far better information to hand. We've just purchased the Hayward's Insights tool, which will give us real-time information on our data and our performance. And that's something that we'll be feeding through to Pension Board and Pensions Committee going forward. So we're just in the process of implementing that now. And also we've got some key projects in train at the moment, which will be ongoing above and beyond the kind of the implementation date of the structure. Structure itself, as I mentioned earlier, we want to kickstart this by setting up this team to start taking some of the pressure off of the member services team, dealing with incoming calls, signposting members to better self-service. In the meantime, we'll be working through reviewing job descriptions and sort of putting that new digital sort of team in place and the other teams in place going through the recruitment process. We've kind of started as a management team those discussions already, so we're meeting kind of every other week, beginning to move things forward with a number of key projects and project leads to take this forward. Tony's mentioned the new office accommodation, which will be up and running hopefully by the end of the year, or if not very early next year. So that's obviously going to be a key feature for us to actually get everyone working as much as possible in the same environment going forward. And to kind of wrap all this up, we will have a revised admin strategy document being put through, which will contain all of the revised comm strategy and the new way of working. And we'll kind of push that out for consultation, having taken that to the committee again in about a year's time. Well, that's kind of, I think, all I wanted to say on the presentation. If anyone's got any questions, I think there will be an opportunity to cover those off now.
I've got no one in the chat. Anyone got any questions?
Sorry, Carolyn.
Yeah, I've got two in the chat now. I've got Shirley Marsh, followed by Councillor John Cato.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Jeff, for taking us through, and Caroline for taking us through that. It looks like a lot of work, but going in the right direction. Just in terms of the changes, I'm assuming that when we start to introduce them, that staff will see them as a positive thing. You know, we're not talking about reductions here, are we? Talking about actually enhancing the structure, because at this, you know, at this time we don't want to be unnerving people in the team and potentially losing them. But I'm assuming that it will be seen as a positive change.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. Yeah, that's a very good point. So we are opening up sort of the conversation with the wider team from next month. So,
okay.
But you're quite correct. That this isn't seen as there's no one at risk in this this environment. We are actually looking to increase some of the management structure as well to kind of better support the operational side of things. And I think, generally speaking, it's going to give people more of an opportunity to move through through the administration side and actually see it more of a career than at the moment. People seem to feel as though they might be stuck in kind of one single environment. So I think it opens up opportunity, and hopefully is kind of probably reintroducing that thought that pensions is a bit of a career path on the administration side, and that hasn't been the case.
A lot of career path, yeah.
Yes,
it's a great career to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
okay, I've got Councillor John Cato, followed by William New.
Thank you. I'm just curious on a practical level with regard to the digital services and the iConnect. The room, is the room there for mistakes to be made, and how are they verified that the changes that the self-service process is actually done correctly? And is the training for people that use the system, or is the system so usable that they don't need the training?
So there's a lot of questions you have there, John. So
yes, all generally around the process that's going to go on, and how much negative impact or positive impact it's going to have, and usability and things like that.
Yeah, no. So as far as the data coming from the employer is concerned, at the moment we are carrying out a lot of that verification for the employer, although it's the employer's data. We have been training the employers on the submission of the data through the iConnect extract, and that will continue to be the case. But we do intend to hand back the control of the data submissions on a monthly basis by the employer. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves completely overwhelmed with work. So the intention is to ensure that we've got employers who understand their role and understand what they should be feeding through. Bearing in mind, this is really an extract from their payroll. So you would think if the information's incorrect, then they're going to be incorrectly paying people, potentially as a very bottom line. We will carry out a number of exception checks before that data becomes uploaded. So we'll work through by exception rather than having to check absolutely everything. So that's the way we'll kind of work and push back any errors to the employers. But generally speaking, with the rounded training in place, we see it as a positive way forward. And also the fact that members will be able to more widely see their data in real time rather than having to sometimes wait for months.
Good, thanks, Jeff. I mean, just wondering, has this process been taken up by a number of people already? So you've got experience of it. I guess that's one thing. Yeah. And the other was whether or not there's any opportunity for, as it were, in accounting terms, double bookkeeping, like the employer would be able to utilize this system to double check that their own systems are performing correctly.
Right. So firstly, the iConnect product itself is something that has been in existence for about 10 years now. We were one of the first administrators to take this on board, but it is now more widely used in the LGPS. So probably in excess of 50% of the funds do use either iConnect or something very similar that's offered by the other software provider. So that the system has been kind of developed over that period of time. We have, let's say, we used it with probably 2 of our unitary authorities to start with, and now we've built that up to a portfolio that supports about 85% of the membership. So it's that 15% membership that we need to kind of finish off with, which equates to about 170 employers.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Sorry, I didn't understand that properly beforehand.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
As far as double bookkeeping is concerned, I think employers possibly can use it to reconcile some of their work, if that's what you meant. It shouldn't be seen as a tool that can be manipulated, because it is automated from the system. But there is a dashboard that sits with it, which does obviously give us and the employer sort of visibility on the data that's being pushed through, and also if there are any errors potentially within the data on a monthly basis.
Yeah, thank you.
Could I just add to that, Jeff? I just wanted to make it clear that none of the self-service solutions are new. So we've had iConnect, as Jeff said, for some time, and we've also had My Pension Online for some time. The idea of putting them together in the digital services team was really just to maximise their effects. Both of them, as I say, we've had for some time, but Hayward, the software supplier, has developed further functionality that we're possibly not using. And also it's just to complete the rollout, really, so that all employers use iConnect, and to get the majority of members to use My Pension Online. So at the moment, we've probably got less than a third of members using My Pension Online. So it was really just taking the opportunity with the data that we get from iConnect. So all new starters would be notified to us through the iConnect data. So take that opportunity to use that starter information and get people signed up to My Pension Online straight away. And then likewise, when we receive leaver notifications, we have a better process for what we do with the leaver data. So all the checks and balances and tolerances that were already there in the system will be exactly the same, but it's just how we better use the data, really.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.
So the last question I've got is William Liu, but can I just ask people to keep an eye on the chat, because Claire Newbury's put in a comment about iConnect in there. So to keep an eye on the chat for comments, and that's another way of inputting to the debate. So William Liu.
Okay. Firstly, just to reassure Councillor Cato that as an employer, representation here. We've been using the iConnect for some years now, and there's very little issue with it. And it just saves us a lot of time in reconciling numbers as well. So that we have no issue with that. As a member of the scheme, I've used my pension online, and have no issue with it. And I do wish, my staff at the university uses it more. So every time I talk to staff about pension, I try to get them to sign up and just, do a bit of self-help on my pension. My question here is towards the end. But firstly, just to say that this is a huge transformation piece of work you guys are doing here. So it's not about just moving deck chair around the organization. So linking to what Shirley's question earlier is making sure that you do get the right people in the right post or the right role, and offer them training and monitoring performance, etc., as they start to pick up the new roles. And I presume this will be managed as a project basis, where you have risk register and progress report, and hopefully, over time, in the meeting that we're going to have in the next couple of years, you could just sort of report back to us whether it is on track and anything that you need adjusting on. My real question is, it's a big project. We are losing Tony next month or in May. What is the plan in terms of getting the leadership in to help in your journey here? Not that I don't trust Jeff and Caroline. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic job, but it's such a big project. You need all hands on deck.
I don't know, Tony wants to answer that.
Okay. Thanks for that one, William. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, the direction of travel we set ourselves and the challenge, we've been sort of discussing and planning as a management team for quite some time. So we know the tasks that we have to deliver. We've been working with colleagues elsewhere in the council, particularly on the HR side. We've also been working with external consultants as well to make sure we're sort of divining the jobs correctly and getting the right result. What we need to do now is put it into practice and actually deliver that revised structure and that revised, way of working. Really, it will take some time. In terms of Jeff and Liz and Caroline are sort of, well briefed about taking that forward. In terms of the overall leadership, I've been speaking to the council's Section 151 officer over the past month or so, and his view is that he is looking at putting revised leadership arrangements in place, and what he will probably be doing is putting some interim arrangements in place, because it will take some time to actually find the new sort of head of service. He's also looking at separating out my role as well, which makes it slightly more complicated, to have somebody sort of dedicated to leading the Avon Pension Fund. As my role is sort of half looking after the rest of the council's finances as well. So that will be separated out. So, overall, I think the Avon Pension Fund will have, significantly more dedicated resource focused on it than it has now. So I think it'll just take a little bit of time to put in place. In the meantime, I'm sure Andy will be announcing what the interim arrangements will be once he's determined those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got Pauline Gordon as the last speaker, and we've been on this item for over half an hour now, so we do need someone at some point to move a motion recommending or otherwise the paper. So Pauline.
Hi, my question was around Tony, so that's been covered, and I wondered if maybe somewhere down the line we might get to see this in action, maybe just a kind of whistle-stop tour of what can be done with it, just to bring it to life a little bit.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question, Paul. In a little bit of interference then.
Sorry, I was just wondering if we could maybe see it in action at some point, maybe when it's been developed.
Yeah. I'm sure that can be arranged. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I've got no one else wishing to speak, but we do need to pass a motion on this paper. So can someone move something?
Can I move? I'll move, Chair.
Right, and second it?
Seconded.
That was Pauline seconding it. Right, thank you. Does anyone else want to say anything more before we go to the vote? Right, so the position is, I'm assuming that we're all in favour. So if you're abstaining or against, you just need to put something in the chat. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're in favour. I'm getting no one typing into the chat. I'll give you a few more seconds. So I'm assuming that's unanimous in favour. Thank you very much. Right, can we now move to item 9, Treasury Management Policy, and David Richards.
Thank you, Chair. The committee review the Treasury Management Policy annually. The policy covers the in-house management of cash, which is required for our day-to-day needs. The policy for 22-23 is unchanged from last year's policy that was approved in March. It is in line with the Council's Treasury Management Policy and with the advice of their Treasury Management advisors. I'm happy to take any questions.
I've got no one coming up in chat. I've got no one waving at me.
Chairman, I'm happy to propose acceptance.
Okay. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second it, Chair.
John Finch, thank you very much. I've still got no one coming up in chat wanting to raise any questions or debate it. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Chat, we got one. Hang on, let's see who that is. Councillor John Cato.
Just a small question, probably, but in terms of the Appendix 2 proposed counterparty list, you've got a number down there in Singapore, some of which is China as well. I just wonder if there's, and they seem to be slightly lower Fitch ratings, as I understand it. Are we still planning to utilize those?
So those are just included for sort of illustrative purposes in Appendix 2. So it's just Appendix 1 that who we're actually place our money with. So they're just banks and institutions around the world that we could that sort of fit the criteria as per Appendix 1. So you're not approving Appendix 2. That's just for information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. William Liu.
David, thank you. It's a very simple question. I just don't want to make the assumption. Every time when the policy come across for us for approval, I always ask the same question. The Avon Pension Fund money is sitting in a separate bank account from the council bank account. Yes?
That's correct, yes.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
Pauline Gordon.
Hi, just one quick one really. Is it possible to see if this changes over time? Because it strikes me that it's always quite similar, David. Do you like the changes perhaps?
Yes.
Didn't
yes.
see a lot of change from last time.
Yeah, so I mean, some banks sort of come in and out of the policy. I mean, one of the main changes I can think of the top of my head is that Handelsbanken we're using again, which we weren't using in the last year. Just on the advice of Arlene Close with the Council's Treasury Management Advisors. So they tell us which banks are safe to use. And then some drop out and some come back in again. That answers your question. Yep.
I've got no one else waving at me or putting MIS in the chat. I'll give you a few more seconds in case someone is struggling with the typing. Right, it was moved and seconded at the start that we approved the paper. And so therefore we moved to the vote. Therefore, you only need to record it in the chat if you wish to abstain or vote against. The default position, I'm assuming, is that you're all in favour. So I'll give you a few minutes for anyone who wants to put abstain, or a few seconds, anyone abstain or against. I've got no one typing in. I've got no one waving at me. So therefore, I'm assuming we're unanimous in supporting that recommendation. Thank you very much. Can we now move to item 10, update on legislation? And can I invite Jeff Cleek, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the regulatory update which has been included in your papers for noting. The report table summarises the main legislative change update since the last meeting, together with any actions undertaken by the fund. An updated list of regulatory updates is available to view in the Modern Gov library. There are a couple of points to note. On McLeod judgment, the relevant bill has now received royal assent, so it is an Act of Parliament with the remedy period now confirmed as ending on the 31st of March 2022. The first two sets of LGPS regulations are expected before the summer recess, which will pave the way for remedy to be implemented in the LGPS. The DLUHC plans to consult on a second set of regulations in the autumn, which is expected to cover areas such as taxation and compensation. The LGA have recently stated that they expect the LGPS regs to come into effect now from the 1st of October 2023, which is a delay from the ministerial statement originally, which said it would be coming in from April 2023, but that hasn't yet been confirmed. The other point to note, obviously, is on the awful situation in Ukraine. So, in light of events in Ukraine and the sanctioning being imposed on Russia by the UK government, LGPS funds were advised by the Scheme Advisory Board to consider the implications for their investment portfolios. In relation to the administration, the fund has undertaken a series of overseas checks to ascertain that there aren't any pensioner or dependent members with accounts either in Russia or in Ukraine. I'm happy to take any questions on that paper.
I've got no one coming in with questions yet.
Shirley, I think so.
Oh, Shirley Marsh.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jeff. Just on the pension transfers, the pension scans regulations, I'm just wondering whether you've been able to implement those and how onerous they have been for you.
Yes, we have. So we've undertaken a bit of a review of our transfer out process to introduce the new levels, and which will actually prepare us for the stronger nudge that the TPR are going to be introducing. It is more onerous because we are now sort of complied to push members to contact the Pensions Advisory Service in most cases, so that there are more steps involved, and the process itself takes longer to go through. So yeah, that has had an impact. I'm hoping that that will be reflected eventually in the time frames for reporting some of these.
Yeah, I think that's an important point for the committee to be aware of, because obviously, you know, we're sort of in a dilemma. We want to do the right thing for our members and protect them as far as we can, but obviously that will mean the transfers may take longer to put through, and it is having a huge effect on some of the private sector schemes that I'm seeing. So I think people need to be aware that it could take longer, especially as we start to get used to the new regulations.
Yeah, I think what I'm obviously not on this report, but on the admin report in future, I think what we'll begin to pull through is where, because if we get red flags on transfers out, then we actually don't proceed with them, and that's going to potentially cause complaints, no doubt. But I think if we do get those cases, or as they come through, we'll probably start reporting those numbers to the committee and board.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Richard Orton.
Sorry, Richard, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Could you please clarify when local government pensions funds are expected to implement the McLeod judgment? Or what the timescale would be?
Yeah, Okay, so the regulations, as I say, they've got royal assent now, and it's expected that the regs will come into play from the 1st of April, but it sounds like the LGA are already saying that that's going to probably be delayed now until October 2023. So rather than another 12 months' time, it's possibly going to be another 18 months' time.
So it all depends on the regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why have the regulations been delayed?
I think there's going to be quite a lot of complexity around the detail,
Okay.
particularly around taxation and how members who are potentially awarded interest payments for late payment, how that might be impacted. So I think there's a lot of, I think the devil's in the detail on this, but
Okay.
we haven't seen what the regulations look like yet. So
okay,
we'll
thanks.
wait.
I've got no one else lined up to speak or ask questions. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it if you want to ask a question. Anyone else? Can I have someone move a recommendation?
Happy to move the recommendations, Chair.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I'm going to assume the default position that we're all in favour. So you only need to go into chat if you wish to abstain or vote against. I've got no one typing in abstain or against, so I'm declaring it a unanimous vote again. Thank you very much. Can I invite Jeff Cleek to introduce and present the report for item 11, Pension Fund Administration.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is the quarterly admin report for noting, which includes the risk management, and going forwards also will include the budget monitoring. On the admin side, the workload remains challenging at the moment and has done so for a while now. You'll see the appendices there which contain our performance. There's a fair amount of amber red still. That ties in with the fact that we have got a project in train at the moment to clear some backlog. So obviously the backlog work coming through is already sort of out of date. So that is forcing some of those performance indicators to be red, particularly around transfers, refunds, etc. But we hope that moving forward, as we clear that backlog down, and the project to do that is intended to end at the end of March. We're going to be probably looking at a 6 to 8 week delay on that now, probably looking more towards the end of May, very early June at the latest. Having spoken with the Anna on member services team this week, we kind of had the situation whereby we've needed to remove staff that are working on the backlog to deal with the business as usual. So it's a very fine line between where you place your resource. But going forward, we certainly have seen an upturn in performance since returning to the office. As Tony alluded to earlier, we've now got some temporary accommodation in the Guildhall in Bath. So we've got space for about 15 workstations. So we are working on a bit of a rota basis, getting people in, working together more collaboratively. And that is making a difference to performance. So it's heading now in the right direction, I'm pleased to say. We also are working our way through a number of projects at the moment, a number of projects in train, including the address tracing project, as I say, the backlog project. On the valuation is a big piece of work, which well, on the admin side, we're well on course to kind of meet our deadlines for as well. What I should say, that there has been a considerable increase in sort of lever documents coming through, particularly since looking back over the last 3 years. And I think that reflects possibly the fact that employers are maybe taking on people on shorter contracts now. We're certainly getting, we've had an increase of 3,200 leavers over and above what we had sort of 2.5 years ago. So that's quite a considerable increase. And the structure changes that we introduced earlier as part of the service plan, where we can kind of digitalize and automate some of those processes will certainly aid our workload going forward. Because at the moment that's causing us a real sort of problem on processing, because whilst the employer services are going through that data, they then have to pass that across to member services to deal with. And that's causing member services to almost be constantly working against the clock. So another number of projects, as I say, in train at the moment. Just like to pick up a little bit on the fire side of things. So according to the paper, as it says in the paper, we are supporting Avon Fire and Rescue through its immediate detriment process at the moment, whereby those cases are being dealt with ahead of McLeod. We'll mention that we have had a lengthy conversation with the Avon Fire and Rescue director, and we will be looking to exit from that contract probably sometime during 23-24. At the moment, the Avon Fire and Rescue, which contains 4 pension schemes, all extremely complex now, that represents less than 1% of our overall membership of the fund, and yet we have to deliver exactly the same service across all the aspects as we do for the RGPS. So it causes us, a kind of a disproportionate amount of work for fire as opposed to what we can spend on the LGPS. So that will enable us to focus our attention fully on the LGPS going forward once that contract comes to an end. I'm happy to take some questions at this point on the paper.
Richard Orton is the first one.
I've unmuted now. Reference paragraph 9.7 in the report. It says, as part of the levelling up agenda, further regulations are expected to direct investments of LGPS funds. Is that right? Because investments are supposed to be invested in behalf of members. It's always been fought by the unions that have always challenged government regulations when the government's tried to direct investments in the pension fund.
Yeah. Shall I answer that, Chair?
Did you catch all of it? Because Richard was dropping in and out of mine. Did you catch the whole question?
Yeah, I got the question. Yeah, and as part of the levelling up papers that the government issued earlier on this year, there was the assertion in there that something like 5% of LGPS funds would be invested locally, and we sort of, the Scheme Advisory Board has been trying to seek some advice about what locally means, and what it means is investing across the United Kingdom as opposed to locally, really. But yeah, so that was the expectation. Now, what that actually translates into when guidance comes out, because we are expecting guidance, will be a different thing. But in the same, in the same vein as well, there's also been, discussion around aligning investment strategy with foreign policy, defence policy as well. So I am expecting there to be some further guidance which comes out, which is about aligning investment strategies with government policy. Now, you're absolutely right. We've always defended the position in the past. I think the problem is once the government starts to issue guidance, it's a case of comply or answer as to why you're not complying, really. So we'll have to wait and see until some of this guidance comes out as to what exactly we have to do.
Thank you. Pauline, have you answered your own question?
I think so. I was just a wee bit confused on the trend symbols, but I think what it is they're just looking at the change. So you can have ones that are all in red. This is on page 87, and they come through as a green on the trend. So that just threw me a bit. But I think I've worked it out. So if that's right, you don't need to come back.
Okay, thank you. Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. Jeff, I'm pleased to see that we're outsourcing some of the project work. That's a good thing to see, and something we should continue to work on. I'm just wondering, with the amount of work that we've got in backlogs in the SLAs, whether that's having an impact on the number of complaints that we're seeing from members, because often that's where we start chasing our own tail, where we're getting complaints in because of delays and then having to deal with the complaint. And I'm just wondering whether it is having an impact or not.
I think that there certainly has been a slight increase in complaints, and that has been around down to members chasing. And part of the new digital sort of arrangements will be that we'll kind of try and filter out all incoming sort of post and try and signpost people to self-serve where possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we can focus more on the actual work itself with the team. So, we have had a bit of a situation where I think complaints have not gone up massively, but there has been a slight increase in complaints because of.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, just because of the sheer volume of work and the volume of work's caused the complaints because we haven't been able to clear the work.
I know, it's a catch-22, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And in those situations, I'm wondering whether there's anything we can do to try and manage expectations up front as much as we can. Because obviously we want to hit SLAs, but we don't want to do it at all cost. So if we can manage the expectation of the member, so they're not expecting and they're not chasing, it just might help get us through that kind of hiatus, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Cato.
Thank you. I'm just noticing that we've got a fair number of things that have taken longer to process than target, and also noticing on the risk register that we still have the situation where we don't have enough people to do the jobs. Where is it? The first item on the risk register, recruitment of staff. And just wondering what's the direction of travel overall? How are we doing and what do we need to do?
I mean, it's not that we haven't recruited staff. We have recruited staff, but at the same time, we've lost staff as well. And even since the last meeting in December, we've had a couple more people leave, and we've got one going. We've got two going in the next 2 months. So we are replacing people, but people are still leaving. So it's kind of, for various reasons, not just because of moving on to other things. People are retiring or leaving unexpectedly, perhaps. So it's a case of trying to move some of the work around where we have to. We've sort of achieved that to varying degrees of success recently. But I think what my hope is that when we get through and remodel the structure, introduce more of a career path for people, that we won't kind of find that people want to move on so quickly.
Is there anything, I guess, about us as the committee? What can we do to support improvement in this area? I mean, would you reach out and say this is what we need, or how does it work?
John, can I sort of come in and answer that?
Thanks, Tony.
What we're trying to do with the structure, particularly the career grade, is to make it a much more attractive proposition for people to come in and want to stay. I think the problem we got, and it's a problem of the public sector really, is there is a shortage within the labour force, right across the public sector, and it's not just us who are having trouble recruiting; it's all areas across the public sector. So it's a fundamental strategic problem of government, really, which they have to tackle. Now, we can only do so much within the purse that we have, you know, and we're in a very competitive field, really. So, you know, we're trying to offer that package which gives you a bit of a career path, which will attract perhaps some of the younger people coming through who want to aspire and stay a little bit longer, you know. But, you know, we are in a competitive environment. We're right on the city of Bristol, you know, as well, again, which is a very competitive area. You know, there are a lot of pension funds and financial institutions in the area. And it's been an ongoing issue for us for quite some time, really. And I think that, you know, since Brexit as well, you know, what we've seen is a downturn in what's available in the labour market as well, which is now affecting the entire industry, really. So we've actually been quite successful over the last couple of months in recruiting. You know, we've brought through some really strong candidates. The problem we got now is keeping them, really. And I don't know what we can do about that, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or points they wish to make on this paper? I'll give you a few seconds to type in. I've got no one coming in for questions. I do need someone to move that we note the paper and second it. Can I have someone?
I'll second it, Chair.
So Bruce Shirley second. Who noted it?
I did. Bruce Shirley.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to assume the default position is that we all agree with that. And if you don't, can you type abstain or against in the chat? I've got no one typing anything in, so that again is unanimous. Thank you very much. Hang on, I've just lost my other screen for the next paper. Right, thank you very much. So that's passed and unanimous. Item 12, work plans. Can I invite Caroline Morgan to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we start the work plan report, we did want to bring something to the committee's attention. It was part of the service plan, but we didn't get round to discussing it. It's about our intention to go out to procurement for a new AVC provider. Our existing provider, Aviva, has given us notice that they'll no longer accept any new business from any new employers that are set up, which leaves us with the position of not having an ABC provider, which we need to have under regulations. So we've managed to secure an interim arrangement with Aviva that they will continue to accept business for a further maximum of 6 months. And we've now started discussions with Hyman's Robertson, who are going to help us procure a new provider. They're actually carrying out this exercise on behalf of 6 other funds at the moment, and the AVC market is incredibly limited right now. The LGA recently issued a bulletin which mentioned that there were sort of about 3 different providers that would accept new business. The reality is there is actually only one realistic provider, and that's Legal in General. So Hyman's are going to start some work for us at the moment where they'll put a proposal that they'll get information from both Aviva and Utmost, who are our current providers, and they'll negotiate some terms with Legal in General, and we'll end up with a proposal for a new provider. But it is expected that it will be Legal in General because there just really isn't any other viable option. So we just wanted, it is covered in the service plan, and it's budgeted for, but we just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention because it's probably happened a little bit earlier than we intended it to. I don't know if anybody wanted to ask any questions on that, or I'll move straight on to the work plan report.
I've got one question from William Liu.
Yes, please. Caroline, two questions. Why is Aviva and others not wanting to take up the business? And what about existing employers? Are they continuing in Aviva, or do we have to switch to L&G as well?
Well, firstly, providers are not very interested in the business because it's just not worth their while. The ABC take-up across members is very, very small, and members that do pay in tend to pay in quite low sort of contributions. So it's just not favourable business for providers. The other thing that is unattractive is the complexity. Because funds tend to have so many employers, providers have to set up a separate policy for each employer, and that's quite an onerous process. And I think it's just for a very small fund of money. What we believe, although the terms are not fully sort of negotiated yet, but we believe that Legal in General probably will want us to transfer our existing business because it's the fund that they're interested in. So we've got it's around about £4 million fund, and really they want to manage that fund rather than just take new business. So our hand might be forced again in having to transfer existing business, but that it's not decided yet. Obviously, when we get all the information from Hyman's and from Legal in General, then we'll be in a position to know what we'll have to do.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Can I just can I just add another point on that? If we did keep with Aviva and a new employer and a new provider for new business, it would mean employers would have to be sending payments to two different organisations. It most probably is just not a practical thing to do. So we'll look at all the options, but it's just the market has retrenched so much. It's very, very limited what we can do.
Okay, thank you. Shirley Marsh.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering, Caroline, given the difficulty of providing this benefit, whether we're feeding this through to those that are making these regulations. I'm assuming providing ABCs is part of the regulations for the scheme that we have to do. And given the difficulty, we ought to be feeding that back so that those that are making decisions understand that.
Yeah, absolutely, Shirley. That's exactly what we're going to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I've got no more questions on that part, Caroline. So can you finish the rest of your presentation?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so this is the usual work plan and training plan report for Notin. Attached to the report is the work plan for committee and investment panel, setting out provisional agendas for forthcoming meetings. The dates for future committee and panel meetings are also included. And the provisional training programme for the year ahead is included in Appendix 3. I would also like to take the opportunity to remind members of the changes mentioned in the December meeting. So from this meeting onwards, the monitoring reports for the regulatory update, investment performance monitoring and budget monitoring are available in the Modern Gov library. So once a year, each of the monitoring reports will be part of the main committee papers so that there is public availability of the reports, but otherwise they will be mainly in the Modern Gov library. So in order to access the library, all members will require private access to Modern Gov, and our comms team have been in contact with all members through January, February and March to set up relevant access and provide any support or training required. We are conscious that some members are having technical difficulties and if anybody does still need any further support, then please let myself or the communications team know, and we can provide that support. When the meeting was going to be in person, we were planning to hold a drop-in clinic where people could bring in their equipment and the comms team could help them to set it up. But obviously, as we've gone to a virtual meeting, that didn't happen. But please let us know if anybody does still require help. Secondly, I'd like to remind everybody about the Hyman's Online Learning Academy. So everybody should have received their login now to the learning. And as stated in our latest newsletter, we would like everyone to complete the introduction module by the end of March. Completion of the other modules has been planned to support training required for upcoming agenda items, and the timetable for completion can be found in the training plan in Appendix 3. Happy to take any questions.
I've got no one typing in any questions on this. I'll give you a few seconds more. Right, Caroline, it looks as though we've got no questions for you. Can I have someone move that we note the report and second it?
So moved, Chair. Councillor Stern.
Seconded.
Who seconded?
Pauline.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I'm going to assume that the default position is that we're all in favour of that recommendation. So only type into the chat if you wish to abstain or vote against. I've got no one typing in, and therefore I'm assuming that that's unanimous. Again, thank you very much. Can I move to item 13, Brunel Pension Partnership update, and invite Liz Woodyard to present the report, please?
Thanks, Chair. So this is just the normal update report for noting. All the investment aspects are covered in the investment monitoring update later on in the agenda. There's nothing particular to raise with the committee. There's a BOB meeting on the 17th of March. That was last week. So I don't know whether Tony or Councillor Crossley want to make any comments on that meeting, anything that came out of that. I'm happy to take questions in exempt sessions. There is a couple of things that people might want to ask about, but we only need to go into exempt if people have something that needs to be in exempt.
Yeah.
So
if I could just remind you, if you want to speak on any of the exempt appendices, that's 1, 2A and 2B, then we'll have to move into exempt session. So if you're going to speak and you're going to speak on this, can you please notify me so that we can move a vote to move into exempt? Otherwise, I'm assuming that you don't want to ask on those and you're just speaking in general. So have we got anyone that's got any questions or points? I have one person. Hang on a second. Pauline, just one tiny thing. Pauline.
Hi. No, that was just on the previous section. It was just a quick thing for Caroline. I just noticed a wee typo.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have we got anyone else that wishes to raise any points or ask any questions or discuss anything on this paper?
Paul, shall I just give just 2 minutes on the BOB meeting and the shareholders meeting?
I'll just give a just check. No one wants to, I've got no one coming in. Yes, so please give us a BOB update.
Okay then. So we had the annual general meeting on the 17th of March. 17th of March, the chair was reappointed and the non-exec directors were reappointed, and Brunel have also changed their external auditors. They now appointed Panel Kerr Foster as well. So all of that was all voted through. The main item of business on the oversight board, obviously Ukraine, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but the main piece of work was something which the fund has been pushing for quite some time, which was a strategic review. Because where we've got to is a strategy for Brunel, which was to take us through the transition. Well, clearly that's finished now. So the important bit for us as a fund and a lot of other funds is what are the next steps for Brunel. So there'll be quite a thorough process undertaken over the next few months, engaging with all stakeholders. So the committee and shareholders will be involved in workshops and supporting questionnaires, so that Brunel can start to map out a clear path as to how their services need to develop over the coming years and what the priorities are for all of the funds. So we'll be working with, Liz will be working with you in over the coming months to sort of work through that. And we've got some initial meetings with the chair and vice chair lined up to give some initial feedback on those areas. But I would suspect, you know, things like climate change and local investing, you know, will feature high on the agenda. So that's the main bits I wanted to add, Chair.
Right, we've got Councillor Paul May wants to speak on exempt item 1. So Caroline, can you just move the motion that we can exclude the public, or can you move the words out?
Sorry. Mark, do you have the words? Mark Durnford.
Chair, they're on your briefing note if you have that in front of you.
I've got the briefing note in front of me, yeah.
So beneath where it says
words. Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, I've got them now. Right. So the committee, having been satisfied that the public interest will be better served by not disclosing relevant information, proposes, in accordance with the provisions of Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public should be excluded from this meeting for this item of business because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as amended. I so move. Can I have someone second that?
I second that, Chair.
Right. And I'm assuming the position is that we're all in favour. Does anyone wish to abstain or vote against?
No.
So that's unanimous. Can I ask someone to exclude any members of the public, please? And I hope you